Hi everyone, Steve here. This episode of The Steve Hilton Show was taped before the awful news this week about Charlie. You've seen me talk about how much he meant to me and to all of us. Next week's episode, we'll devote to Charlie and everything that he meant and what it means for our future. But I know he would have wanted us to carry on, to fight on, and so we're releasing this episode. Hope you enjoy it. See you next week for our special on Charlie Kirk. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Steve Hilton Show. A very important news update for you later in the show with Jen Horn, when we'll be bringing you the latest on the dog who voted in California elections and what this means for our democracy. And we are also joined today, I'm very excited to say, by Kelly Loeffler. She is the administrator of the Small Business Administration in President Trump's cabinet. She is in California, focusing on what has happened with the wildfires and rebuilding Los Angeles. Not a lot is the story when you think about the inaction of Gavin Newsom, state government, Karen Bass, local government. Kelly Loeffler's here to do her part and see whether the federal administration can help us out here. That's what she's here to do, and she joins us on the show today. But let me start with something very serious, very, very upsetting. I'm sure you've seen the story by now. I'm taping this Monday morning, September the 8th. This is a video that's gone viral on social media for all the obvious and appalling and understandable reasons, but the wrong reasons, which is this appalling murder in Charlotte, North Carolina. The video was released on September the 5th, just a couple of days ago, and the whole country is appalled by it. This was a young woman sitting in her seat, checking her phone. Millions of people do this every single day. And suddenly this monster behind her jumps up. You can see the video is so appalling. I mean, you've all seen it, I'm sure. Just stabs her in the neck and she's dead. Just this totally senseless murder. A young woman, her life taken away, her family, her friends robbed of her being part of their lives, her future snatched away in this senseless act. And what do we take from this? There's a number of things. Just the sort of basic facts of it. Crime was committed on August the 22nd. The video was just released. That's why we're talking about it now. To Carlos Brown, the perpetrator, there's no doubt about that. Everyone can see that. It's on video. This is someone who has been described as a career criminal, which, as Charlie Kirk pointed out, like, what is it about our society that phrase exists and makes sense? How do we have career criminals? That's just a separate point, but that's how this guy's being described. He's had 14 arrests, was in jail for armed robbery, but has very, very severe mental health issues. He was subject to involuntary confinement, was assessed over 2 weeks as having schizophrenia, and so on. Just an enormous long list of reasons why this guy should never have been out there in a position where he could just take someone's life. So that's the point I want to get to in a second. But there is a point before that that we need to address, which is less about the substance of what went on here than about the coverage of what went on here. And I want to contrast what we're seeing from the media in the last couple of days since this video was released to what we saw in the case of another incident on public transit not that long ago. You'll all remember the case of Daniel Penny in New York, who intervened to stop something like this happening. Then he was the one who was prosecuted, eventually, of course, acquitted, but he was the one who was prosecuted for trying to stop a crime from happening. And here you have an appalling crime that did happen. And look at the contrast in the media's coverage of it. There's basically been no media coverage of this appalling murder in Charlotte. And of course, the conversation around that is that this is driven, as it so often is, by race. Because in the Daniel Penny case, you have a white man who intervenes to stop a woman who's being violently threatened by a black man, and he ends up killing the black man in the attempt to protect an innocent bystander. In this case, it's a young white woman who is killed by a black man. And so that's all the speculation around that, which is yet again, the media has a narrative that they're pushing. And they don't want to tell this story because it's not consistent with their narrative. And so just as much as the outrage about the incident, the volume of the conversation I'm seeing is about why isn't the media covering this? Like, what is wrong with our media that they're so still, after all these years when we've said, well, we've had peak woke and it's not as bad as it was 5 years ago when this all popped up with, of course, George Floyd and all of that. Not so bad anymore. And with the the re-election of President Trump, that means that this is we've kind of deflated this balloon of woke nonsense in our society. Well, it still seems to be active, and that's a point that many people are making. But let's get to the substance of it, because I just think it's so important for us to focus on what happened here, and I see it particularly from a California perspective, because what you're seeing in California happen as a direct result of Democrat policy, and particularly Gavin Newsom's policies, is highly relevant to this particular case. So here you have a guy in North Carolina who everybody would agree. First of all, you just see the video, right? Someone who does that is just clearly a complete monster. There's no other way of describing that. No normal person would do this. No one in their right mind would do this. And so wherever you make that judgment as to the combination of moral depravity and evil and mental health, whatever that mix is, it's a mix that means that this person should never have been out there in a position to take an innocent person's life. And if we had a properly functioning system of criminal justice and mental health provision, this guy would not have been in that light rail car that night, just wouldn't have been there. So this couldn't have happened. Now, I don't know anything about what's happening in North Carolina and Charlotte. That's not anything I've ever studied, but I have studied what's going on in California. And in California, you've got both aspects of this for the last decade or more have been heading in the wrong direction. The pure evil criminality aspect and the mental health aspect both headed in the wrong direction in terms of incarceration. Because what's been operating as the driving force with criminal justice policy in California, and again, it's another example of something that starts in California and then infects the rest of the country, is an ideology. I mean, the criminal justice reform is how we really, we sort of end up talking about it, and you see different manifestations of that, defund the police and so on. But substantively, the real driver for what's actually happened in the real world in terms of criminal justice reform and what they call the progressive prosecutor movement, all this kind of stuff, is this notion of what they call decarceration. Decarceration. The argument is basically that any form of incarceration, any form of the forced confinement of someone against their will, is by definition racist, and therefore by definition must be resisted, repealed, removed from our system. That's what they think, that nobody should be locked up for anything. And this is based on this extreme race ideology, which looks at the data on incarceration and says we have a disproportionate number of black men in jail, and that means that the system is racist. Remember, that's the ideology of the woke movement, which is to say any observable racial gap, distinction, is always the result of racism and discrimination, whether that's structural racism over the years or immediate present discrimination. It's always racism, can't be explained by anything else. And so they look at the prison system in particular and say, well, it's disproportionately black men, often young black men, in our prisons and jails. Therefore, they're racist. Therefore, we need to shut them down. That's the thinking. That's the ideology. It's called decarceration, and it actually informs all these other policies that you see going on. For example, no cash bail. Well, why no cash bail? Because you don't want people in jail. And so on and on. The sentencing decisions, all of these things. The whole thing is driven by we cannot have people in jail at all. And so that ideology, extreme as it sounds, is what has been implemented here in California. So over the last few years, Gavin Newsom has closed 4 state prisons, and a 5th is about to close, taking tens of thousands of people who were in state prison, also in the pandemic, by the way, for COVID reasons. Unbelievably, they released people onto the streets and into our communities. tens of thousands of dangerous, violent criminals, as a result of prison closures, have been released into the community in California. And even if they weren't released into the community, they were released into put into county jails, which were never the mainly county jails are mainly there to detain people while they're awaiting trial. They're not equipped to deal with these hardened, dangerous, violent criminals in any way. Neither are they equipped to deal with people with severe mental health problems. And that brings me, so I'll get to that in a second, but what you're seeing is in California again, I'm just talking about California where I have the knowledge, is that they've been releasing tens of thousands of people like this guy, like exactly like this guy, in terms of the rap sheet and his mental health problems, out of state prison into the community or into county jails. What does that mean? When you put them in county jails, they can't cope. They're not designed for that. They have now become overcrowded. County jails have become overcrowded, which means that the knock-on effect of that is that you've got all sorts of people who should be in county jail for, you could say, maybe lesser crimes that don't rise to the level of a sort of state felony, that aren't in county jails because the judges and the court system know that there's no room. So they're basically released immediately. Catch and release is what's happening in California. And of course, that has a knock-on effect to the police who think, well, why should I bother making an arrest, pursuing criminals? Because I know what's going to happen. We'll get to the court. They'll say there's no room in the jail, so you're just out. And so it's a complete demoralization and an undermining of the whole system that's going on because of this decarceration policy. It's incredibly insidious, and you see it everywhere. And this incident is a reminder of the incredibly serious consequences. And we've had stories like this in California where you have murders committed by people who should have been inside, but they're not inside because of this decarceration agenda. So this is highly relevant to what's going on here today. And I now want to get to the mental health part of it, because as well as all that going on, the state and local government in California has undermined funding for mental health services. They've taken money that, and actually you saw this most obviously and outrageously in this ballot initiative that Gavin Newsom pushed forward and barely got through, even with all the weight of the Democrat machine, all the millions of dollars spent on his side, hardly any on the other side. This was Proposition 1 last year, March 2024, which was supposed to be the solution to all these connected problems in California of homelessness and crime and mental health, all these things we see, the chaos on our streets, the absolute squalor and sort of completely, just shameful scenes that we've got used to over the years of people with these massive mental health problems and drug addiction and so on, just living on our streets and turning our great cities into places with third world conditions. As I always say, that's an insult to the third world. So his proposition last year was supposed to deal with all of that. Proposition 1, that's how it was touted. And if you actually look at what it actually did, unbelievably, is that it reduced funding. It took money away from counties' mental health services and instead put it into the pockets of crony developers, housing developers, to push what they call affordable housing and permanent supportive housing for people in these situations. They don't want them in jail. They don't want them incarcerated. They don't want them in mental health institutions. So they're going to be in their own apartments, which cost, because of the inflation and the regulations and all the other ridiculous policies of California Democrats, these apartments are $700,000, $800,000, $1 million each, and that's where they're putting people who should never be on their own. They should be incarcerated, and they're reducing their mental health budgets in order to pay for that. And at the same time, these people who are clearly in need of mental health treatment in California are ending up in the county jails. I mean, I spoke to a sheriff not that long ago, one of our counties here in the Bay Area. He was telling me that half the people in his jails, in his county jails, 50%, have severe mental health problems and psychosis, and they're not being treated at all. He's just holding them because the system doesn't have any capacity. And so, this ideology of, you can't force anyone to, this is extreme liberal woke left ideology of decarceration is having these absolutely catastrophic consequences. And all of that is captured in this unbelievable, tragic, and outrageous incident in North Carolina. But this is what's going on here in California all the time. It may not be as vivid, may not be as dramatic with the footage, this video footage, and the extreme nature of this crime, and the visceral reaction that it therefore has provoked, and the way that this has captured the attention of so many people across the country, although not the media. Um, this is what's happening in California. This is what's happening in California, and it's just a matter of time until another incident happens in California again. It may not get the attention that this one did in Charlotte, North Carolina. I guarantee you that it's going to be happening soon somewhere in California as a direct result of this decarceration ideology and the prison closure program and the mental health defunding that goes along with it, that's happened, pushed by Gavin Newsom and the Democrats. And so the final point I will make is to say that I will reverse that as governor. You can read my plan. It's on my website, stevehiltonforgovernor.com. Under policies, there's a whole paper outlining what's gone wrong in this particular set of policies around crime and what I will do to fix it. In the meantime, we just have to hope that this is a bit of a wake-up call generally for politicians of whichever party who have just allowed this kind of absolute disaster in terms of law enforcement and mental health provision to happen. Here's the human result of it. We've got to stop this kind of thing from happening. Joining us now, someone who was a guest on our show not that long ago, but she's here today, not just on our show, she's in California. I'm very excited to welcome her back to the Steve Hilton Show. Kelly Loeffler, administrator of the Small Business Administration in President Trump's cabinet. So, Administrator, you are in California. It's my pleasure to welcome you to our once golden state. Will be golden again when I'm the governor. You're doing your best from your administration, as well as the Trump administration overall, to help us out here in California. There's a number of things I'd like to hit on what you're doing on people who've been debanked and how you're going to deal with that. You've got some really interesting announcements on manufacturing. But let's start with where you are. You're in Los Angeles, and you're going to be, amongst other things, focusing on the devastating fires and the disastrous response from the local and state leadership, and seeing for yourself what can be done. Tell us about that.
That's right, Stephen. I appreciate all your advocacy for the residents of Los Angeles County. Look, 8 months ago, this nation watched this county, this city burn. And now 6 months ago, I was here on the ground in Palisades, Altadena, along with a couple hundred SBA employees delivering recovery and relief alongside FEMA. President Trump's first trip, this week one trip, was first to the survivors of the North Carolina flooding, and then out here to California. So this administration has delivered billions to relief in California. We're checking on the progress. We know that 73% of all of SBA's disaster relief has come out here to California. Even though we've had 100 disasters, this one disaster has accounted for 73% of the funds. So I want to make sure that that rebuilding is getting done. Really doesn't look like it is based on the data. So we've had 12,000 applications. Only about 20% of the $3.2 billion has been pulled down.
I mean, I've been there many times, exactly as you say, and it's just so shocking that in this great country of ours, where we can do such amazing things, and you have a governor. I understand you don't want to be necessarily too political about it, but I can be. We have a governor who sort of pompously declared back in January, it's all on tape, we're going to have a Marshall Plan for rebuilding, and it's just so maddening. What can you do? What are you doing specifically that's making up for this complete lack of the kind of urgent action that we need? Just get into some of the stories there, because I think people find it really interesting.
Well, that's what I'm here to listen and to see 6 months after my last visit, to see how it's going. And we know it's not going well. We know that in LA County, over 1,800 building applications have been filed. Maybe 300 have been approved. So the administration, from the EPA, FEMA, SBA, President Trump coming out, everyone made this a huge priority. It looks like the mayor and the governor are not making Los Angeles recovery a huge priority. The SBA still has over a dozen staff on the ground. We had up to a couple hundred at one point, and we want to know why the work's not getting done, because we've made those proceeds available, and I'm here to listen to stories and to be on the ground, which I will be in Pacific Palisades later today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. We need it. One of the things you're going to be doing is connecting with someone who's been an incredibly powerful advocate for all of this. That's Spencer Pratt. Tell us about how that all came together.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I've been following Spencer's account since he really became a voice, really almost the leading voice on the ground, advocating, telling the stories. Obviously, he and his beautiful wife lost their home, their family, they have two young boys. His parents lost their home. But that echoes across this community where 40,000 acres burned. And so, it's really amazing. I mean, God has put him in this position for this time because people need a voice. I'm at a conference right now. I had one of the workers come up to me this morning and said, I understand you're going to be meeting with Spencer. Please tell him we all need his voice. And so I want to amplify voices like yours, like Spencer Pratt's, like other victims who have not been heard and addressed by this governor and this mayor.
Fantastic. Well, it's really great. I mean, this is what and I think this is what you're getting just generally from this Trump administration. This kind of positive can do, and one of my favorite words, hustle. Just come on, let's just get on with stuff. It's just so different when you have people like you and like the president with a business background in these positions of leadership in our government.
Yeah, I'm incredibly blessed to be part of this administration and President Trump's cabinet. And you're exactly right. Every day we get after it for the American people. We're a group of people that have come together with putting ego aside and who gets credit. It's about what do we get done for the American people who have not had a voice for 4 years. And so it's incredibly humbling to be able to do the work. And we all come from private sector backgrounds where if you didn't get results, you got fired. And I think that's what's going to start to happen across this country, where elected leaders are not getting results. The voters in this country, across states and cities, need to fire those who are not getting work done for the American people.
And it's that mindset of the business mindset. I mean, I think about this all the time. I mean, people know me from the TV and the media and everything, but most of my career has been in business. I've started and run companies. I one of my first job was project manager for a construction company, and you got to just focus on the details and be specific and ask the right questions. Like, wait, has that been done? You said it would be done. Why isn't it done? If you don't do that, these guys can't do that. Just this basic way of thinking about stuff, and it just seems completely absent from the kind of people we have in charge, certainly in California.
That's right. The American ethos is hard work, transparency, results, and actually working together and not politicizing it. And unfortunately, we've seen this become very politicized. My work out here is not political. It's to make sure that we're serving what, as you mentioned, should be a great state, that should be the pride and joy of America. Well, it's become a disgrace. And we have to ensure that we're holding people accountable to deliver those results, and the money, the 3.2 billion that we have committed to LA citizens as they recover. In fact, this very week, the SBA is hosting 8 seminars, some in person, some online, to ensure that the city is more resilient in the face of, more fires that will inevitably come. There's one right now happening up north. And so we need to ensure that we're doing our part to let people know how to strengthen and be safe, because that's not what's happening at the state and local level.
Exactly. Well, thank you again for doing that. Let's switch to a couple of the other things that you're working on. I mentioned them just a few minutes ago. So this, again, reversing this disgraceful action we saw growing and growing under the Biden administration, and indeed before that, on the politicization of banking decisions and debanking people and organizations. What's happening there with you?
Well, under President Trump's leadership, this illegal, divisive debanking initiative that started under Barack Obama, you might remember Operation Choke Point, that started to choke off funding for disfavored industries and businesses and people and nonprofits. I mean, whether it was Christian or pro-life or 2A, Slowly they started losing their bank accounts secretly. And we found out why, because they put it into federal regulation that if you ran a reputational risky business, that bank would, the bank regulators would not only raise an eyebrow, they would raise their capital requirements. So banks just started deciding they're going to pick winners and losers based on reputational risk. That is illegal. We cannot discriminate based on lawful businesses. I understand credit risk. We have to judge business decisions by credit risk. I come out of 30 years of financial services experience, specifically in risk management. Look, this isn't about risk management. This is about starting with Obama, continuing into the Biden administration with Operation Choke Point 2.0. And look, the president was debanked. My campaign was debanked. We all know stories. Even Elizabeth Warren acknowledges there were 12,000 complaints of debanking at the CFPB.
So what steps can you take? Is it going to be something that, you can stop overnight, or is it going to be something that is going to need, vigilant enforcement? How's this going to work?
Well, let's be clear. Most banks are not doing this. Most community banks are serving their communities, trying to do their best to help their customers get access to capital, which, as you know, as a small businessman, is the lifeblood of business. Yeah. So essentially, we've gone out. SBA operates the largest lending network in the federal government. We're the largest business lender in the federal government of guaranteed loans. So we've sent a letter to our 5,000 banks and said, first of all, cease and desist. Second of all, send examples and let us know where this has happened. Please reinstate customers that were unlawfully, not due to credit risk reasons, but due to politics, ideology, beliefs, or disfavored industries. So we're working through that process right now and working alongside the federal regulators, the OCC, FDIC, the Fed, who are the regulators of these banks.
Fantastic. So again, doing what you should be doing, but wasn't done before, being that incredibly strong voice for business, for small business, and obviously because of the nature of your administration. It's fantastic. I love it. What should people do if they feel that they need help with this? How can they get in touch with your organization?
Yeah, well, certainly, I mean, reach out to the SBA. We're very accessible. We're monitoring all the inbounds, both from the lenders and the borrowers. Or even if you weren't a borrower, if you tried to open an account just to put your assets in, you wanted to open an account. We've read stories, we've all read the stories about nonprofits not even being able to open just a basic checking account. Many of those are already reinstated because those were not lawful. But the SBA is trying to help people through this. Obviously, complaints can go into the state banking regulators, federal banking regulators as well. But we have thousands of examples.
Fantastic. All right, another one. Manufacturing. I loved seeing this. Big priority, of course, of the president's. How's that connecting with what are you doing within your administration to help move that forward, the growth of manufacturing in our country?
Well, President Trump ran and won on putting Americans first. And what does America first mean? It means made in the USA. And in order to achieve that, essentially the SBA, we kicked off our 50-state tour of manufacturing. What I learned firsthand is that manufacturers are spring loaded for growth now that we've passed the tax cuts bill, which really is going to create tremendous opportunity to build in America, to have that 20% pass-through deduction, to have 100% expensing for investing in America. And now we've expanded access to capital through our manufacturers' access to revolving credit loans. They're called MARC loans. And so that's long-term, basically working capital for people that are trying to build in America, to hire, and to reverse our dependence on China. Most manufacturers in America are small businesses. They have less than 1,500 employees. They're making everything from automotive to defense components or products, food manufacturing. We have to protect those in America. And President Trump's fair trade agenda is working. And that's what's great about the tariffs is these are not just economic security, it's national security. So we want to make sure that we're there for them. And we're doubling the size of our manufacturing loans to $10 million, assuming this bipartisan bill passes in Congress, hopefully very soon.
Fantastic. It's a great point you make there, because I think when people think of manufacturing, they imagine some, giant, factory campus, and of course that is a huge part of it, but the supply chains for that is where you get a lot of this small business activity, isn't it? I mean, I see it all the time in California on the road, although they're making it so impossible to do anything. I mean, the energy, all the input costs, labor, everything is kind of, they're like, it's like they're at war with the manufacturing here in California. That's something I want to change. But I love that aspect of what you're doing. What are you seeing in terms of overall response, and the kind of level of confidence and energy and sentiment among small businesses in America towards the first end of the first calendar year of the Trump um, presidency coming up at the end of the year? What do you think this first year will have meant in terms of the small business um, kind of sentiment in America?
Well, it's tremendous. First of all, small business optimism is above its 52-year average. It's at 5 months highs. And it's not just the small business owners, it's the workers in the small businesses. I've talked to welders and waitresses, and it's not just about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. It's about they just got a tax cut from President Trump's tax cut bill. They know that this president is on the side of American workers, of American industry, and we're seeing investment in small business on Main Street. And that's what this agenda is really about. It's starting with Main Street, and Wall Street will be fine, but Main Street has to thrive. And that's what President Trump has put first.
What are some of the other areas that you're really excited about getting stuck into? It feels like you've really, as honestly, I got to say, every single member of the administration, when we see it in those cabinet meetings, and you're just all there firing on all cylinders. But what's coming up for you in the future?
Well, this administration is so collaborative. I'm working with Labor Secretary Lori Chavez de Raymer on ensuring that we have more apprenticeships. We've got to strengthen our skilled trades workforce. That's a pain point of small business and manufacturing as we build out this AI economy. But not just that, the convergence of the digital and the physical, because we are going to make things in America again. I've been able to work with Secretary Linda McMahon on education to ensure that we have that communication about educating workers for small businesses. Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins. I mean, the list goes on. It's so collaborative. But I'm also making sure that our agency gets back to serving small businesses and growing the economy. That's the mandate for the SBA. Under Biden, the agency doubled in size and in budget. We've taken both those metrics back to where they were pre-COVID, pre-Biden, cut the agency in half in terms of spending and headcount, but also are on track for record loan production. So we are doing more with less, just like small businesses, and getting out the waste, fraud, and abuse, $3 billion in excessive contracts. I mean, the list goes on of what we found. I mean, as I talk to my cabinet colleagues, we're all astounded at the damage the Biden administration did to this to our really infrastructure in the federal government. They grew it out of control. We're getting it back under control.
I want to end with just something about small business generally, because we did cover that in our previous conversation. But I want to make sure for those who didn't see and hear that we get into that. Just the sort of basic point about how big and important small businesses are to our country and our economy beyond just manufacturing. But I just have to ask you that that last cabinet meeting in particular, absolutely amazing. What is it like? Just tell us, give us a little bit of a flavor of what's that like.
It's incredible. I mean, first of all, President Trump sets the tone. He sets the energy. We all thrive off of it. We love the cabinet meetings for the ability we bring different viewpoints and experiences to bear. We work together. And behind the scenes, it's very much like a business meeting. It's incredible. I came out of 30 years in the private sector. You hash things out. You figure out where can I help uh, when I talked to Secretary Hegseth, I'll be visiting with the National Guard tomorrow. I got an idea about some things we can do with the National Guard here in LA. Just very collaborative. The president is an unparalleled visionary. He remembers everything, and he puts the American people first in every conversation. And what's interesting about what you see in the media is it doesn't reflect what's really going on in the world until you see the cabinet meetings. And then the cabinet meeting pulls the curtain back. And I think people are incredibly empowered to know that this government finally works for them. They were told by the Obama and Biden administrations that you work for us. You're going to grow our domain up here in Washington. And we are putting power back in the hands of the people, thanks to President Trump and this administration.
But as you've mentioned a few times with different examples, you all work together. You can really feel that. Just the vibes coming out of those sessions. You can feel that you all get along with each other. You're all on the same mission. You all support the president. It's just really wonderful to see.
It's like being back in the business world. I think that's why we're all so energized, because we can actually get work done. And I've had business leaders meeting after meeting saying, we almost can't keep up with you guys. And I love that, because I got into politics about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because of my frustration with the government. We were trying to innovate and grow and hire, and the federal government kept trying to stop us. And so what I saw firsthand uh, is what all of our cabinet members have seen. And they want to support President Trump in delivering a vision that is going to completely transform this country back to the original founders' vision of exceptionalism, of freedom, of strength. I mean, President Trump's out talking about religious freedom, one of the founding principles of this country that Biden, Obama, others have tried to get rid of in this country. So it's just example after example of getting back to normalcy, common sense, and ending the crazy chaos that Democrats are trying to instill in this country.
It's wonderful to see. All right, last question. Just there's the role of small business in America, and what it means to you and the scale of it.
Well, it's incredible. I mean, I'm the product of a small business. I grew up on a family farm, 5 generations. I grew up in a small trucking business. My father started it after high school. He was served in the guard and learned how to drive a truck. No college. My mom ran the books, no college. That is what small business does. It's generational hope and opportunity for 99% of all businesses in this country. They create 2 out of every 3 new jobs. If you want something done, you're going to go ask a small business. You're not going to go to a big business. I've worked for big businesses. I'm grateful for all they do for this country. But small business is the heartbeat and the economic engine of this country, and we have to continue to support it.
100%. And I just will add my little bit of politics here. They are suffering the most at the hands of this unbelievably hostile to business
Yeah.
regime that we have here in California. And it's the heart of my mission to help make California golden again. So there you go.
It's why
Great to
people
see
are
you.
leaving. Yeah.
Kelly Loeffler, Small
Yeah.
Business Administrator. Wonderful to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Joining us now for some great updates on what is happening in California, our friend Jen Horn, AM 870, The Morning Answer. Make sure you listen wherever you are. You don't have to be in LA and Southern California. I'm all over the state, and people say, I love listening to you with Jen and Grant. Grant Stinchfield, of course. I'm usually on Friday mornings. You should listen every morning. And here is Jen. We're taping this Monday morning, the 8th of September, and you've just had some news,
Yeah, some
which you
news
can share with us. Yeah.
that just broke this morning. It's really good news, I think, for the Trump administration, but more importantly, just law and order in general. You might remember that an LA judge had put a stay essentially on ICE's ability to do enforcement in Los Angeles County. And the idea that it was racist, right? That they were just going after brown people, and that's what they were
Yes.
doing. That was about skin color, and that they had no other reason to go after them for their immigration status. And Steve, I really get so annoyed and appalled by this idea, because truly the reason that we're in this mess where ICE even has to come into California or into Los Angeles County is because of the sanctuary state policy. If we were just simply turning over people as they get out of jail to the hands of federal agents, you wouldn't have to release them back into the community when then they start to get jobs or they move into an apartment or whatever the case may be. And then you have to send ICE agents out into the field, into the neighborhoods, into the communities to go after and arrest these people, which they are doing. These are targeted attempts. These are warrants that they are serving. But then what happens? Well, people get picked up who aren't guilty of violent crime, who might, their only crime really is being in the country illegally, which we remember is still a crime, but they get picked up in all of this. And you can't really pick and choose which laws to follow and which laws not to follow when you're a police officer. So this is really good news today. So the Supreme Court came down with a 6-3 decision that is in favor of the Trump administration, allowing the Trump administration to actually go back to enforcement of people who are here. And by the way, giving them the freedom to go and ask people for their citizenship, essentially, for proof of that. So that even gives them a step further, basically, than what they were doing before, as we just talked about.
Oh, that's
These
interesting. So they can ask, they can stop someone and say, "Show me your proof of citizenship."
If they have reasonable suspicion that that is an illegal immigrant, they have the right to stop them, which was spelled out in the ruling. Kavanaugh was the justice who wrote for the majority and said that they have the right, if they have suspicion that this is someone illegally in the country, that they can ask for citizenship and even detain for a short time to try to figure that out. So I think that this is really good news, not just for the Trump administration, but Steve, for law and order. We have so many of these activist judges who think it's their job to step in and tell people how we can uphold the law. And I'm really glad that this message was sent. I think it was a pretty strong message, again, with that language that was put in there by Justice Kavanaugh. I think it makes it really, really noteworthy and important.
It's very interesting, and I just think that's exactly where I was going with it, which is one of the, and I find myself sort of making the point this way a lot when I've been asked about it on the campaign trail, is, this whole broken immigration system and story that we've had now for 50 years or more in America, it's put everyone in such a horrible position
Yeah.
because you've got millions of people. Everyone knows that there is mass law breaking going on, and we just sort of turned a blind eye. It's so corrosive that we've just had this acceptance of, yeah, just ignore the law. It's fine. It's just, we need it's just the way it is. So yeah, the law may be what it is, but of course we don't like it, and so we'll just ignore it because it doesn't suit our needs. It's just terrible for a society to have that. And I also think about it as a legal immigrant myself. I think about it all the time. Um, and I make the point this way, which is we moved here, as you know, in 2012, my wife and my two sons. And when we arrived, we didn't know that we were gonna stay here forever. It was just a thing where we thought, "Well, let's try it out. It's for the sake of our family." My wife was doing a lot of commuting back and forth from California. I was working in 10 Downing Street. Our second son was born. It was just a lot, and so we thought, for the sanity of our family, let's all be together in California, especially when we have young kids. That was just the thinking. We didn't kinda think beyond that. And as we were here and loved it so much and got into things, and then made the decision to stay. So then we had a visa, which we then converted to a green card. That's a whole process you have to go through. All the bureaucracy and the interviews and health checks and, a lot of stuff. And then we made the decision finally that this really was it. This is our home. And I am an American, proud to be so. So I, went then the next step so it goes visa, green card, citizenship. That took 9 years.
Yeah.
2021 is when I became an American. And so that's how it's done. And but the point I wanted to make is, and everyone's different, and I understand, people say, well, you're different. You arrive with a much different set of opportunities and support than other people. Yeah, of course that's true. But the principle is the same. And this is how I put it. If at any stage in that process, right, the visa, green card, the citizenship application, if at any stage something went wrong for some weird reason, who knows? And I don't know, the green card was denied, which didn't happen, or the citizenship didn't happen. It wouldn't have entered my head to just, oh, stay here
Right.
and just say, oh, F it. I don't care. I'm just going to stay. Like, what? It wouldn't enter my head to do that. It's crazy to think that I would do that. And so to me, it's a very simple point. It's the law. So don't break it.
That's right. Just follow it. And that's part one of this, is that we forget that even though we can have empathy for the reasons why people have come here, that if they come here and if they stay without taking the proper steps to become a citizen, then they are breaking the law, no matter what the reason was. And that sometimes is hard for people to digest. But that's number one. Law and order is certainly important. And I also think that there's another piece to this. And it's our cell phones are the way that we get all of our news updates, right? So the reason I knew that this story was breaking is that the LA Times sent me a headline about it. So I click on the story from the Los Angeles Times and see the first, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the first paragraph is about how the Trump administration now has the right to go to car washes, to go after people with brown skin, non-English speakers. This is supposed to be our newspaper of record in Los Angeles. And literally, if you read the first 3 paragraphs, it is all about skin color, it is all about race. And I am so tired of it. I really think it just so cheapens every issue. And it's how you know the left is losing, because anytime leftists feel like they're losing, they're calling you a racist or they're coming out with some names. This is, I think we need to do a better job. And it's funny, I should tell you, I actually went to Bill Maher's show on Friday, which I never thought in a million years you'd ever see Jennifer Horn at Bill Maher's show. But I went there because I think a friend of ours, Stephen Moore, who is he's an economist for President Trump, great guy. He's on my show every week, just like you are. And so he said, "Hey, I'm coming to town. Would you like to come with me to Bill Maher?" So I went with him, and it's definitely a hostile crowd, of course. But the left so believes that this is about racism and not about law and order, not about protecting the laws of our country. You watch some of the things that they are saying and how the news media it colors things. You understand why people believe this, because sources that they trust. And the reason I bring it up is that Caitlin Collins from CNN, who is gorgeous, and I think she's done a great job reporting news, but you could see her disdain for President Trump when she was talking. And just made me wish, and maybe I'm a Pollyanna. I respect Fox News. I respect MSNBC. You know where they're coming from. Everybody kind of has a point of view. But when you look at the CNNs of the world or the LA Times of the world or the CBS, ABC, NBC news organizations in the evening, there's an anticipation that what you're getting is real news. And for anybody who read that story today with the LA Times, it would make you feel hopeless if you believed it, that the president of the United States and the Supreme Court of the United States were somehow racist entities. And it's just such a disservice to people because they get away from the news story and really
Yes.
create their own narrative.
And then we wonder why there's all this division, and then they publish sort of, pompous, op-eds about we have to do something about the division and hate in our country, whatever, even though they're fueling it. It's amazing. Um, all right, let's talk about Prop 50. I was at the California Republican Convention this past weekend. It was the main topic there. It's going to be the main focus of a lot of things in politics here in California for the next few weeks, unless, of course, by lawsuit in federal court, which we filed last Thursday in Orange County in federal court, to stop it even happening. Because, I mean, my basic point is, of course it's illegal, it's unconstitutional. I'll just remind people very quickly the legal basis of our lawsuit, which is the Equal Protection Clause, which is clear, it has been defined both in the federal and the California Constitution as meaning a number of things. Number one, it includes the principle of one person, one vote. One person, one vote has also been defined in the case law as meaning every vote should have equal weight. One person's vote shouldn't count for more than another's. And finally, and most importantly, that means that electoral districts where you don't have something like where it's defined by the entity itself, for example, President of the United States, the district is America. For the state Senate or governor's race, the district is the state. But where you have to draw maps for districts, the law says that they should be, in order to meet the test of equal protection, one person, one vote, equal vote, every vote equal value, districts should be roughly equal in population size. How can they possibly have guaranteed that with these maps that they drew halfway through the cycle, years after the last census, when millions of people have left California? You've had whole neighborhoods in Los Angeles literally burned to the ground. There's no way they had the information to draw the maps in order to meet this test. That's the argument in our lawsuit. We filed it in federal court. That's different to the lawsuits that have been filed by other Republican players in the state, which have been almost immediately tossed out by the California Supreme Court. We'll see what happens. I'm chasing our lawyers literally this morning to find out what's going on and when we can expect something. But the point is that if we can stop this even getting to the ballot, and most importantly, Gavin Newsom wasting $250 million of our taxpayer money on something that nobody asked for and that's basically a corrupt contribution to his presidential campaign, that would be great. So let's just put that aside, because I'm hoping this doesn't even happen. But what else is going on, Jen?
Well, I thank you for filing that lawsuit. because I think it's important that you did it in federal court. These state lawsuits are absolutely getting tossed every second because these are, again, politically active judges. So we want to make sure that we actually have some legs and something to stand on. So I applaud you for doing that, because there's so many reasons that this is illegal. But I think there's some positive points. Sadly, the Republican Party in California, as you know, Steve, gets so split up between the so-called establishment, and the grassroots. I know you probably saw that at the convention this week. Obviously, people are lining up behind you and behind your opponent as well. There's just a lot of splitting that's going on right now in the Republican Party. I hope we can remember that we are on the same page when it comes to Prop 50, and that this should be in everybody's interest. So I'm encouraged, even though some of these guys are not my favorite politically. I think it's really important that Kevin McCarthy is putting his political weight into this fight, and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Charles Munger. I think this is all really important because we need the money, we need the funding, we need the organization. So I applaud those individuals. Again, can't say I agree with them at all times, but I'm happy that they're in the fight, and I hope that we follow suit. But there are some glimmers of hope, and I think the main thing that we have to address is the messaging of Prop 50, because there was some polling that came out last week, and I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but when asked, voters in California, likely voters in California, this was the polling that was done, it was 6 out of 10 who wanted to keep the system the way it is now. Now, that's really great for the No on Prop 50 effort. That means that voters support the independent redistricting committee and they want to keep it. Great. But the problem comes in when they actually read the prop that is written now, Proposition 50, what will appear on the ballot. And here's the problem with that. 15% of people who wanted to vote no on Prop 50 ended up voting yes on Prop 50 because they didn't understand the ballot measure. They didn't understand the title and summary. And I know this sometimes sounds like it's in the weeds, but this is something that's really important. It's actually been one of the things that's top on my heart in how we can save California. And that is creating a one sentence title and summary for ballot initiatives. Right now, these ballot summaries are written and they are confusing. You might think back to the most recent reference that was really bad, which was the gas tax. People didn't want the gas tax. The polling indicated that, just like it does here with Proposition 50. But a yes meant no and a no meant yes. And they confused the voters into voting for a gas tax, which everybody hates, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. So we, I think, need to do something to make sure that we're not going to change the process of title and summary in the next 30 days. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure that everybody who is involved in this fight is talking to people and that the messaging is very clear that to leave things as they are now, it is a no vote. And I think that's the one thing that we need to take from this polling, because that 15% will make a difference. Right now, it's kind of like a 60-40 split where the votes are yes and no with no losing. If you add 15% to that, to the no column, and take away 15% from the yes column, the no's win by 5% of the vote. So that 15% of people that don't understand the ballot measure will be the determining factor if you believe this polling. And so I think it's really important that we are focused on one central message, and that's going to be hard in today's Republican Party in California.
So, what do you think of a couple of things? I just want to sort of throw at you and see your reaction. First of all, the yes on 50 side, Gavin Newsom, all his cronies, and the whole Democratic machine. You can see the entire machine is behind this because every day you're seeing announcements of the classic, parts of what I call the Democrat industrial complex throwing money behind this. This union, that union, the Democrat, like the National Democratic Party, and so on. So you've just got this massive onslaught from the Democrat machine, and it's very clear that their intention is to make this nothing to do with California or our election system or the maps or anything. It's entirely about Trump. If you hate Trump, vote for this. This is a measure. They're literally framing it as this is how we stop Trump. So they're going to make it all about that. So that's part one, your reaction to that. And part two is, what about the counter argument that therefore, if they're making it something so like even more simple, and it's not even about the actual issue, it's just Trump, that actually, rather, if you're in a conversation on the other side and you're talking about maps and fairness and districts and all these things, you're not in the right conversation, and that you need to be more at that level, and that in fact, a better way into it on the no side would just be to not take it so literally and just say, right, let's make it all about Newsom, or let's make it all about how do you think how is California doing? Um, if you want, because we know that there's a 60% majority who think that California is going in the wrong direction. It's something I always cite when I explain why I think it's possible for me to win the governor's race. There's a majority for change in California. What do you think about all of that?
I do think that if it were about, for instance, I think it's prime time for a candidate like you, a Republican candidate, to win because California is going in the wrong direction and everybody feels that. But I think it's really hard to counter a Trump bad message, which you're absolutely right. That's what it's going to be in California. And if we get into a Trump bad, Newsom bad contest, well, Newsom is going to win in California. So I think there is some danger to that because as unpopular as Newsom is in our state, when you put him up against President Trump, it's a really tough climb. So I do think that's hard. But what I think is more important is that people like the idea of an independent commission because it's just they like the idea of independence. So I think maybe the message is instead of making it a referendum on either Newsom or Trump, responding by saying you want to keep California independent. And I think that might be the messaging that works or that is closer to working. We also know that a special election is harder to turn out Democrat, aka Trump bad voters, because most people don't vote in general, much less in a special election. So this is again looking back into the soul, I think, of the Republican Party. This is ours to lose. If not everybody shows up, if we don't get it together, we better hope that Indiana is going to start redistricting soon because we're going to lose this. And so we need that plan B going on.
Right.
So
I think they are working on that, it seems
they
to me.
are
Yeah.
working on it. I think it's important, but it is, I mean, if you even look at the polling, this is what's so silly to your point, that they support changing the rules just for this election and then going back to the independent commission after 2026. So it's sort of a nightmare scenario for California Republicans because they are going to make this about Trump being bad. So I think that's why we really have to hold on to the idea that we want to keep independence, that we want to keep representation. But I have to be honest, and I am always the optimist, it is an uphill climb if this goes to the special election. And that's why I have so much hope in some of these lawsuits, including yours, because I think that is the best and most efficient way to
Yeah,
stop
well,
this.
I hope so.
Yeah,
That's why I did it,
I
and it's a
know.
good argument. It's a good legal argument. I spent a lot of time on it. I honed it myself, um, and I wrote big parts of the argument because I just think it's very important that we do everything we can. One other thing I'll just mention in terms of how, shamelessly they're avoiding the actual substance of their case because they don't have a case because it's so obviously unfair and ridiculous. The other thing that they're doing, apparently, they're going to be spending a huge amount of money on ads attacking the main funder of the other side of the argument, Charles Munger Jr. Now, remember, Charles Munger Jr. was the main funder of the original initiative to create an independent commission. So you have, it's so classic Democrat. They really are shameless. So they're saying, we love our Citizens Independent Districting Commission, and so we want to make sure that we go back to that in a few years, but just have a little bit, a couple of years break from it so that we can attack Trump. But we really love the Citizens Independent Districting Commission and all of that. At the same time, they're running ads demonizing the guy who helped create the Citizens and it's just so shameless. Anyway,
Do you know
apparently
what I
these
would
ads.
do with an ad? Actually, just real quick, and I know we have to move on, but if I were, because we know that the unions are funding, by and large, Gavin Newsom in this fight for Prop 50. The teachers' unions have spent millions of dollars already. This is about Gavin Newsom becoming president and the leader of the Democrat movement in 2028, right? That's why I want to beat him here because he'll have less of a chance to become president than the rest of the country if we can defeat him in this. But I would say, I would remind people about what the teachers union did to California. I'd put up pictures of mass kids. I would put up big pictures of schools that say closed and say, do you want the teachers union to determine the fate of California in the next few years? Because that's what's happening. I mean, we should fight back. If they want to attack the people behind our side of the movement, there are plenty of gems to attack on their side as well.
Yeah, very good. I think gave me a little idea there. Thank you, Jen.
Happy to do it.
All right. The
That'll be
the thing
$5. I'll send you an invoice.
It's cheap at the price, as they say. All right. So we got to get to the big one. This is the story that we've all been waiting for. I cannot wait to hear you lay it out. I just love the. I think that, can I just sort of let us into a little behind the scenes moment here, where our wonderful producer who produces this show, we're just running through our agenda for our conversation, and I could just see the when you brought this topic up, his reaction was
He liked
it's
it.
like, what? No, it's like, what? Like, come on. Anyway, so the here we are, fanfare.
And by the way, we have to say we're not questioning election integrity because we want this podcast to actually go places. So we're not doing that. But
No, but we are very interested in the story of the dog who voted in
this is a
California
story out of
election.
Costa Mesa. And Costa Mesa, California, apparently, by the way, this woman, not a brainiac. I'm just going to make that declarative statement right now. So this woman has a dog named Maya. And apparently she decided Maya was going to register to vote. So she registered Maya to vote. And Maya did indeed vote in the gubernatorial recall in 2021 and in the primary election in 2022. Apparently, she actually put the dog with an I voted sticker, the one we all get after we go cast our vote, or if we have a mail-in ballot, you get the sticker. So she puts the sticker on the dog and puts that picture up on Instagram both times so that she could show her social media followers that her dog Maya voted in the election. But it wasn't until last year when she really started to get in trouble because she was being investigated and apparently decided it would be a great idea to take a picture of Maya, who passed along, crossed the Rainbow Bridge into dog heaven, and took Maya's collar and stuck it next to the envelope showing Maya's ballot. And the woman said, wow, Maya is still getting ballots even after she passed. Now she's facing 6 years in jail. The Orange County DA, Todd Spitzer, is not one to be messed with, by the way. No word on who she voted for, but I have an idea that it probably wasn't Larry Elder at the recall. And I guess we'll have to see what her fate is, but now she's going to be working through the court system. I do think that Maya was old enough to vote in dog years when she cast her first vote. But once again, probably.
Was she a citizen
Yes,
then?
exactly.
Was she a
She was a citizen of Costa Mesa, wrong breed, maybe. They give you the I voted sticker with all the different languages of I voted. I don't know if they actually had dog talk on there, but if they did, Maya allegedly voted in 2 elections.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so but also the other part of this story I hadn't appreciated was not only did the dog vote in 2 elections, but a mail-in ballot was sent out to a dead dog.
A dead dog. And look, I'm pretty hard on the registrar's office, Steve. I actually purchased my grandparents' house after they passed. And I was always appalled that I kept receiving ballots. I kept receiving a new handicap placard every year from my grandfather, like a renewal for, I think, 20 years, which would have made him like 113 because he lived to be 91. So this happened like a lot from the state of California. And it used to boggle my mind because we went through the system. We went through and declared that they had passed when it happened. I can't say that I'm mad at the Orange County Registrar for not knowing that her dog Maya passed away and taking him off the voter rolls. I think the main issue that I have with them is that the dog was allowed to register to vote in the first place.
I know, but it's such a sort of beautiful detail,
It's
given that there are, by all account and reporting, many dead people who are receiving ballots all the time. Although actually some good news on that, very important. We must get Shiloh on actually. So Shiloh Marks, I talk about him all the time. We're working with him, fantastic guy from down in San Diego, and he's been doing incredible work at cleaning up California's voter rolls. Are you aware of Shiloh?
no, I'm not.
He's been very, very methodically writing to registrars in each county in California, and not even having to file lawsuits. He's had to file lawsuits in a very small number of cases where they've been unresponsive. Mostly they have been responsive, and he's got the results. And he's simply been reminding them of their obligations under federal law to remove inactive, ineligible voters from their rolls. Just as a prompt, just writing them letters saying, here's the law, this is what you should be doing. And he's been tracking the actual changes in registration. We're up to now of just over a few, I don't know, we'll have him on actually, we'll have to do that soon. I think call it a year or so of doing this work, give or take. And we're over 2 million people removed from the voter rolls. It's an amazing result.
Especially in California, where the local registrars will fight you on that. I mean, I would remember being
Some of them are, but most of them are not.
That's
It's
amazing because
interesting.
I know in LA County, there were about 1 million names, I think, that were taken off the voter
Oh,
rolls, and then they
1.5 million. That was
sued.
the Judicial Watch lawsuit, the Tom
That's right,
Fitton.
but then they
Exactly.
sued to have them added back on. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's
unbelievable. You would
amazing.
think that's just in the public interest to get dead people and dogs off of the voter rolls.
Well, that's it
Let 'em
seems like
move.
that's the agenda. Like it never ends in California. It's like
That's right.
there used to be this saying in England, actually it's Scotland, but in the UK, about when you would describe a task that's like never ending, they call it painting the Forth Bridge. Forth as in Forth. There's a sort of estuary in Scotland called the Firth of Forth.
Uh-huh.
God, don't say that when you've had a few drinks. And the Firth of Forth has a bridge, and it needs to be painted the whole time, I guess, like the Golden Gate. And so there's this thing about, well, once you've finished painting it, you just got to start all over again. So
Yeah.
it's never ending. That's the sort of saying.
It's voter
Um,
rolls in California.
yes, exactly. Once you've got the dead people off, then you've got to get the dogs off. And then you got... Oh
I
my
think we need
goodness.
President Trump to say they're coming for the dogs. Literally, this woman was, I guess. I don't
I
know.
know. They're sending ballots to the dogs. They're sending ballots to the pets of the people who live there. Brilliant. Actually, someone must do that. We should do that. Some AI thing.
We
Anyway,
need a bot. Exactly.
lots of creative ideas coming out of this conversation, Jen. Thank you very much. Great
Thank
to
you,
see you
Steve.
as always. As I said, listen to Jen every morning, AM 870, The Answer, The Morning Answer, and we'll see you very soon. Thank
See
you.
you soon.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us today. That's our show. Please make sure you follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Listen to our other podcasts, Big Ideas Book Club, some great conversations on there. And of course, please get involved with my campaign for Governor of California, stevehiltonforgovernor.com. There's a button there on the website saying get involved. Please click that, sign up. We'll get you involved in all the things that we're building at the grassroots level. We need to make this happen in California. I'm very, very confident that we can do it, but only with your help. See you soon, everybody.